Hi, and welcome to this week's episode and show of Wisdom of the Mystics. It's so great to be here with you. My name is Laura Topper, and I'm here with the wonderful Reverend Mastroianni. And together we are shining the light on a very particular mystic. We have an incredible super guest who's come on to share and really to teach us from a different perspective. And I'm really excited about today's broadcast because it brings us to a deeper understanding what mysticism really means. And are we all really mystics? This is the question, I think, for today's broadcast. So we're here with New Thought Media Network, of course, this Center for Spiritual Living focus ministry every day, bringing you programming like this. And I'm just so excited to be partnering with Reverend Kathy and the Science of Mind archives for this series of shows to enlighten and inspire us to our own divinity and magnificence. So welcome here, welcome in, and hi, Reverend Kathy.
Hi, Laura. How wonderful to be here today with you. And as you mentioned, we have really a very special super guest today. And it's my personal honor to introduce him because he is the president of the board of directors for the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation. And I've been so blessed to work with him for these past 8 years that I've been here. And he just shares amazing wisdom of the mystics. And let me share a little bit about his background. So Dr. James Van Cleave has a very vast research-based theological and literature background and knowledge, particularly around Ernest Holmes and science of mind history. His educational background includes a BS and MS in electrical engineering from the University of Illinois, a master's in theological studies from Claremont College, the School of Theology, and a PhD in Bible and Theology, Claremont Colleges. His occupation and community involvement include being the systematic theologian for In Spirit Center for Spiritual Living in Orange County. He's also a board member there as well as on our board. And he's a retired vice president of engineering, NavCon Defense Electronics in Corona, California. I love that his publications include Plato and Jesus dissertations. And he's been on numerous radio shows and he has 6 patents pending. And without further ado, I'd like us to bring on Dr. James Van Cleave. And I'm sure I missed a bunch too, but I'm glad you're here. So wonderful to have you. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Reverend Kathy and Laura. It's quite the pleasure to be here. I love what you're doing. I mean, what you're doing is really such a valuable thing, I think, for all of humanity. Talk about making the world a better place for everyone. And, you know, I'm so happy to talk about one of my favorite people in the whole world, Dr. Matthew Fox, Dr. Reverend, I guess, Matthew Fox, who I consider to be an expert on modern day and medieval, or actually mysticism from day one, which I'll talk about in a minute. But so thank you.
Good. Thank you. And so what could you, just to start us off with about Matthew Fox, who is Matthew Fox? Who is he in his day-to-day life? What would you like us to know about him?
Well, he's quite the busy fellow these days, and he's up in the California's Bay Area. He is currently an Episcopal priest. He was a Catholic priest for many years, and he was a Dominican, that is, a member of the order, the Dominican order, until he said something a little too positive and got himself removed by one of the more conservative cardinals in the Catholic Church. Now, one of the things about mysticism is the orders of the Catholic Church, Dominicans, Benedictines, Franciscans, and including the nuns, Mary Knowles, etc. Basically, they're all, most of them are true mystics in that they, in the Vatican II, they redefine things to show that if you're a priest, running a church as your job, then you are what they call active priests. But if you are in an order, and quite often these orders, like the Sisters Clare and all that, they are essentially block themselves in a cell and pray constantly, pray for one good thing or another. And those are the mystics. So the Vatican II defined the so-called contemplatives, and basically condoned the whole entire area of mysticism in the Catholic Church, and good for them. So Matthew has quite an experience. He taught under some of the most famous people in the world. That is, he was a student under that, and he's written, I think, about 30 books, and expert in medieval Latin. And so I'm just looking here, Meister Eckhart, he wrote 2 or 3 books on him. Thomas Merton, Thomas Aquinas, Hildegard of Bingen, Julian of Norwich, and I don't know how many more. And studied mysticism basically his entire life. Matter of fact, his first book I'm looking here is 1972, and it's called Becoming a Mystical Bear. And so he was into mysticism since 1972, and he was a Catholic priest until, I believe, about 1995 or so. And when he left the Catholic Church within days, the Episcopals grabbed him and put him to work. So that's his life. He is he's a very busy guy. He has started an Order of the Sacred Earth a couple of years ago, which says that, contrary to what you can take out of the Bible, the earth is not evil. Matter is not evil. It's all good. Does that sound familiar? God is all there is, maybe. And so he says that, doggone it, we've got to start protecting the earth. We've got to worship, not necessarily worship, but we've got to recognize the earth as a divine entity and start treating it that way. And it's a huge movement, getting bigger all the time. And I was part of it in the early days. So, wow. But I don't know, he's probably still writing another book yet on mysticism, but his early, but one of the books we're going to talk about today is called Coming of the Cosmic Christ, and this is like 1988 or so. And in that book, he has a large chapter on mysticism, and in studying all of the mystics that he came up with certain common characteristics. 21 of them, actually. Now, all mystics don't have all 21, but most of them have. If they haven't experienced all of them, they probably are on the road to doing that. So, and that to me is extremely valuable because it is so compatible, in my mind at least, it is so compatible with all of New Thought. And
yeah.
But the biggest thing he says, basically, we are all mystics. We're just not aware of it. He says that in almost every book he wrote. And that we have to, and we can't just study it. I mean, that would be a left brain thing. He says you got to get into your right brain. And without denying your left brain, of course, but you've got to get an experience, a feeling. As Rumi says, you got to feel it in your heart. Ernest Holmes also says that it's just you can talk about it all you want, but if all you do is talk about it and studying it, you're not there. You must experience it.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff he writes.
So, Dr. Jim, I'm really interested in this direct experience that he's talking about, and I'm wondering how he would experience the direct experience. What is his direct of God? Do you know? Because he to have left the Catholic order and the Catholic faith, to be told that he wasn't worthy of being there because of his beliefs, and then to continue with the body of work that he's doing. He's a very he has an amazing consciousness, and to be able to affect so many people, millions of people with his writings. What is this direct experience that he's talking about?
Well, he did write a book called Confessions, and which I haven't looked at for a while, but it's just one thing after another. But yes, he meditation is very important. I mean, everybody, all the mystics, I think, agree that you have to get into quietness. You have to quiet your physical senses, your five senses. You have to quiet your mind, and breathing, meditation, those kind of things. So yes, you have to get quiet. And I don't recall. He had quite a few experiences. I don't recall them all, but he's not so much how to do it, because that's up to you. I mean, you're not going
Right.
to be taught how to sense and God. I don't know how to teach that. He doesn't know how to teach that. It's not something
Yeah.
you teach. It's something you let happen.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
it's an awareness thing. It's an awareness thing that, and it takes practice, practice, practice. It's like playing the piano. So, but the
So,
important thing is to recognize your own mysticism, and these 21 things will help you do that.
I'm bringing up his website here so that we can see a picture of him, because he is still here on this earth plane and teaching and writing and shining his light.
Yes, he's. I believe he's still in his early 80s.
So, what would you say? Oh wow!
He's still in his early 80s, and he's still very busy. Matter of fact, he has a Order of the Sacred Earth. He is every month or so. He has a Zoom meeting with a lot of people to talk about saving the earth, that sort of thing. Creation spirituality says that creation is blessed. It's positive. It's not a negative thing where men and women were created to be sinners, requiring salvation through Jesus. I mean, that's the standard Catholic and Protestant viewpoint. But creation spirituality says no. We were not created bad. We were created good, and we're still good. And we have to recognize that. We have to feel that. And that opens the door to, like if you look at it opens the door to all kinds of things, social, environmental, gender justice. He's really big on justice. And he says mysticism, when you're a practiced mystic, you're big on justice too. It's one of the characteristics. Yeah. And, so he's a cool cat. What can I tell you?
Dr. Tony Lamata came on to the Wisdom of the Mystics 2 weeks ago, and she was talking about the Master Teacher Jesus and how he was a social reformist and a kind of a social activist, and that was his work, to reform people and to reform attitudes. So I believe that's true. That we have to know what we
Yes,
stand for.
I believe it too. And of course, I'm a theologian, and what I have studied and come to the conclusion of is that most conventional Christianity is based on the teachings of Paul, Saint Paul, they call it. Paul's the one who invented the salvation formulas and the Messiah formula, where Jesus was Messiah. And Paul wrote his letters first, way before the Gospels were written. And then the Gospels used that information because it was such a wonderful, popular thing to spread through the Greek world, the Greek-speaking world. They all wanted to see a God, and they wanted to see, salvation and immortality for themselves, and that's what spread Christianity. Jesus didn't talk about those things really. His teaching. So when you look at the Gospels, when you see something like Messiah, you've got to sort that out because that's Paul speaking. And I can tell you how it happened, but that's another long story. Jesus' parables, several places in the Bible it says Jesus only taught in parables. And the greatest parable of all is the prodigal son. And that's us. We're going through this world kind of, well, not the New Thought people, but we're going through this world kind of unaware and, doing some things for our own personal pleasure and etc. And one of these days we're going to we're going to wake up and we're going to go back to God. And I don't mean die and go to heaven. I mean, we're going to basically discover ourselves, know ourselves.
Right.
And recognize our own divinity. And I think that's New Thought's bottom line. So, anyway.
Absolutely.
So what?
Yeah. So sorry, I thought Kathy was going to say something. No.
No, go ahead. There's a little delay, so I'm just giving you a chance.
Oh, okay. No, I was just interested in. So really, we're in what you think that Matthew Fox really stands for, what he's really discovered.
Well,
and I think maybe that's go on, carry on. I'm sorry, there's a delay.
Well, his creation spirituality, I mean, he's really big on a positive humanity. Humanity is not basically bad that needs salvation. Humanity is basically good that needs awakening. I mean, and he's, as I mentioned, he is big on Mother Earth. And he also has a beautiful book out on angels. He's very much into angels. His angel book, I mean, you can read Swedenborg and people like that and Freud and Jung on angels, but you read Matthew Fox's book and you'll really understand more. And he has a scientist, Rupert, whatever, I forgot his last name, a scientist that, Matthew sticks very close to science, as does religious science, as does all New Thought. We don't turn our back on science. And so
Yeah.
those are the kind of things that he stands for.
So could you talk a little bit about angels from your perspective?
About angels?
Yeah.
Well, they're there.
Because they're there.
They're there. And
because it's not something we read a lot about in the Science of Mind body of work. And he doesn't really talk a lot about angels. So I'm just interested in your viewpoint on them.
Well, Ernest talks a bit about angels, guardian angels, recognizing that and there are angelic beings. But yeah, New Thought isn't too. They don't talk an awful lot about angels, but they don't deny them either, and that there are many planes of existence, and the angelic plane.
Yeah.
Why they would want to come back to Earth and fiddle with us, we don't know, but they're there, and he talks about it. I can grab that book if you've got a second. I mean, it's right here. It's quite a book.
I'm curious. It sounds like a interesting book for sure.
It's called The Physics of Angels.
Oh my goodness.
And it's Rupert Sheldrake. Now, Rupert Sheldrake, I'm sure he's British, but he is very, very popular and a tremendous scientist. And so the two of them, it has to be logical and reasonable, or it's probably not true, is what almost all New Thought people say. Certainly, Matthew Fox, he would not take the label of New Thought on his, necessarily.
Right.
But he is 100% for us. I mean, I feel that. And, we've had some long conversations. But what are the physics behind it? And how does it work? How do they work? And what's been written about them? I mean, what do we know about them? And what do we just believe about them? But one thing that's very important, you have guardian angels, guaranteed. You have at least one, probably more than one. Some of us need a couple, 3 of them to keep us under some degree of control. The important thing is you have to thank your angels. Make sure you do that. Try to do that every day if you can. They really respond to gratitude. And let me tell you, I'm sure you've been in near accidents or things that could have really gone bad where you've literally dodged a bullet. Thank your angels. That says something about Matthew Fox right there, doesn't it?
Well, and I love from his background with the Catholic Church and with the Episcopal Church, to have that angelic being in tune with them and to speak to them. I just think that's very mystical. I mean, I think the angelic realm is a mystical realm, for sure.
Yes, well, the angels are messengers of the divine. Matter of fact, the Greek word for angelic really means messenger. And, a mystic has direct contact with the divine. But you can't do that 24 hours a day. Maybe Jesus could, but we can't. We can't get into it that deep and stay that deep. And if we're driving a car behind a semi-trailer truck, I mean, we certainly don't want to do that. But so there are the divine, but the angels are the messengers that they stick with us and clue us in. We don't have to go deep to see an angel. They're right here. And the ancients said, when you see birds, you ever see birds that do funny things in front of you? I mean, birds that, why is that bird here? And, oh, look at that oriole, or look at that heron, or whatever. And you say, what is that? That's a message. And something from the divine world may be trying to give you a little message. If someone dies in your family or someone close to you dies, next thing you know, the birds show up. Or at least you notice the birds. Let's put it that way. And so
we have a couple notes from Fiona. She's in Geneva, which we're so grateful she's here. Angels as angels of the light of awareness. What do you think of that?
I like that. Like I say, the new thought to me is all about awareness and of the divine. And if the angels are the light of that awareness, basically cluing us in to get aware and be aware. Little clues. We could ignore them. Most people do ignore them. Most people deny they exist. And they just simply totally ignore them. Recognize them. Open your eyes. They're there. And anyway, that's the physics of angels. Excellent book. I love it. It's so easy. It's a conversation with him and Rupert Sheldrake. And both of those people, I think Rupert is still around also. So anyway, but before we go too far, could we walk through some of the 21 characteristics?
Yes, I was
please.
I was going to ask you. That would be wonderful.
It's now a good time.
It would be amazing. Thank you.
Anyway, it's the coming of the cosmic Christ. And by the way, the cosmic Christ isn't Jesus. It's much bigger than that. It's like Ernest Holmes' Christ. It's the Christ consciousness.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hate to just read this like this. This book has been read so many times it's falling apart. But anyway, 21 running, working, experiential definitions of mysticism is the title of this 5 or 6 pages. And first of all, he says mysticism is a right brain experience. It's not you can study mysticism with your left brain, but if you're going to get into it, you got to get to the right brain. Number 1 is experience. Okay, you must experience the divine, and don't settle for theory alone or knowing about the divine. Reading a book, that's not the answer. And so he goes on with several pages into Eckhart and all that. And then the second one we all know called non-dualism. If we're all one, a new thought. They don't. Matter of fact, our ministers quote, Rumi about laying down the pasture together and beyond good and evil. And of course, all philosophers say we have to get. I mean, look at Lao Tzu and the yin and the yang and the qi. It's a circle, and you can't get rid of the negative, the yin. You can't get rid of that. You break the circle. It's your shadow side, as Jung said, and so you got to recognize them both. The third one, compassion. Boy, there's one that we all teach. You have to be compassionate to. And here he quotes Kabir. Kabir was quite the mystic. Connection making is about unity and recognizing unity and going through the connection. I mean, one of our new thought churches is called unity. I mean, unity is. We know all about that. And then radical amazement. Now he quotes Rabbi Abraham Heschel here, who is a Orthodox. I believe he's passed now. Orthodox Jewish rabbi, very famous, who goes into. We should be absolutely amazed at nature, at God, at seeing beauty, at seeing the God in each other. And he goes back to quote the Bible, where if you go to the Book of Wisdom, it says, fear is the beginning of wisdom. And he said, no, the word for fear, which is yadir or something, the word for fear in Hebrew is really awe. It's not, we shouldn't fear God, we should be in awe of God, and there's a big difference. And he says the same Hebrew word it should be translated as awe, and Rabbi Herschel was incredible also.
That's beautiful.
And so we should everything that we see should be a wow, look at that. I mean, if you go outside and look at the stars, and now with the new with the new Webb telescope. They take a tiny little itsy bitsy speck in the middle of a black spot in between stars, a tiny little speck like a piece of sand at the end of your hand, and they blow that up, and what do they see? A billion galaxies. I mean, and
It's
a billion stars.
amazing.
I mean, the universe is so much bigger. If that isn't awesome, you can also look into under a microscope at bacteria evolving right under your nose. And that's awesome. Everything in life is awesome. So next is affirmation of the world as a whole. The world as a whole. We're all one, oneness, etc. Mystics, they're big on that, he says, and he quotes all kinds of people. Andrew Weil, including, would you believe? Right brain, he said, yeah, you got to get into your right brain. You can't just study this stuff. Number 8 is self-critical. Yeah, we do. We have to look at ourselves. We have to know ourselves. As Socrates read at Delphi, we have to know that we're divine, and we have to be somewhat critical of the things that we do that aren't really very divine, and that's okay, he says. Heart knowledge. Okay, the heart is the translator, says Rumi, of the divine. Your brain can't figure it out, but your heart can. And so you got to get more. He calls it heart knowledge. It urges the mystic on, he says. And there are so many people that say, no, don't go with your heart because intuition gets into that. They're wrong. Mystics don't think that way. What is next? Number 10, a return to the source. That is, take a look at your origins. Who are you? Try to be near the source of your being. And he quotes Eckhart all over the place. Try to get back to it. And then at number 11, would you believe, is feminist. Not the masculine God who is the punisher, but the loving feminist who is not the punisher. We got to stop this this fatherly judgment on our soul that doesn't like anything we do. We got to go back to the loving mother that loves you no matter what. And number 12 is panentheistic. God is all there is. Gee. And he quotes Eckhart there. Birthing images. Now that's a different one. We have to birth images. And, it's like visioning, what we call visioning. We have to form an image of what God wants or what we're to do or whatever. We have to form that in our mind, he says. And he says the Middle Age people were really good. St. John of the Cross, Meister Eckhart, were really good at forming images. Number 14 is silence. And he doesn't just mean meditation, but we have to be stricken with, he asked if we're ever stricken with silence. Have you ever seen something so overwhelming that you're just speechless? We need more of that. That kind of ties back into the awesomeness. Nothingness and darkness. He says we have to recognize there is darkness and there is some pain and doubt. There is a dark night of the soul, as St. John said, of the cross said. And that, he said, some suffering can make our souls go larger. He doesn't say you should suffer and you shouldn't look for suffering, but doggone it, sometimes you do. And you suffer anyway. And you didn't ask for it, but you got it. He said there's a lesson there. Childlike playfulness. Jesus said, become like a little child to understand the kingdom of God. And yeah, we all need more of that. He says, "Music. Look at the Dalai Lama. You ever seen him not giggling? I mean, the monks just giggle. Next, psychic justice, very important. Um, that's your harmony and your balance of your psyche." He says it's that's a little hard to understand, that particular one. He said, but you know, balance up your system. Get your yin and yang in balance. Prophetic. Okay, you're going to be a prophet. Oh, whoa. Because a prophet, he says, a mystic in action. Now, when he says prophetic, he's talking about the Old Testament prophets that say, doggone it, things are really bad out here. And there's a war coming. And there's going to be a lot of misery. And we got to get our act together. We got to straighten ourselves out. That's the kind of prophecy he's talking about here. Then he's talking about being with being, and that's always complicated when you're talking about being. We got to know who we are is really, I think, is what he's getting there. And he talks about Gandhi being an expert in that, and Martin Luther King Jr. True self, the mystic in us has got to find the inner person. Birth of the mystic is a birth with God of what is divine and truly oneself. Now, these things aren't totally independent, these 21 things, but you got to find your inner person. And that kind of ties together with the critical. And finally, number 21, we've got to be globally ecumenical. We can't just draw the line. It can't be us versus them. It can't be my religion is better than yours. And you're doing that right now. I mean, you're the New Thought Alliance. You recognize everybody. We're not saying, oh, well, our system is a little bit better than the Fillmore's because it's not necessarily. And those are the 21. And, you know, which one don't you like? I mean, I think they apply to everybody in the New Thought movement. I mean, which one you?
I agree.
Say, I think we should be dualistic. You're not going to say that. You know, make the world better for everyone. That's kind of the way we do things. And, so.
And I think the key one. I mean, they're all fantastic, but I think the giveaway one is that he is acknowledging panentheism, which is, you know, that is the worldview of Ernest Holmes and the New Thought teachings, that there is nothing outside of the divine, there is nothing outside of God, and that God is in, as, and through everything. So I love that because of his religious and theological background, and then he made that shift. And for me, he's a new thought. He's a new thought leader. That's how I see him, Matthew Fox.
I think we could give him an honorary New Thought title.
Shall we?
Like that.
I think we shall.
Yeah.
You know, every book you pick up, he likes, like Hildegard of Bingen and Julian of Norwich. Now, these are female. These are women saints, actually, or at least one of them, of the Catholic Church, who were absolutely miracle workers. And, you know, a lot of people look at mystics and look at the saints of the Catholic Church, and they expect to see men. And Matthew says, no. You can look at men, of course, but you've got to look at what they did. I mean, when they were totally alone in their cell with maybe a little door to open once in a while, they never even got out of. I mean, their cell might be a room. It's not a tiny little room usually, and quite often they have an assistant in there that you know, helps them you know, dress and things like that. But and they write. I mean, those two, Julian and Hildegard. Um, Hildegard, I believe, wrote an opera. What an amazing woman. And these are not educated women, because in the medieval times it was, in Europe anyway, women weren't provided, allowed to get much of an education. But they could always find a teacher, a priest or something, and they learned things that way. And most of them weren't even allowed to learn how to write or read Latin or any language, but they learned anyway because they had a teacher. And their stories are some of the most incredible stories. And Matthew, writes about some of the things they did and some of the things they wrote. Teresa of Avila is another one. She was contemporary with St. John of the Cross, the Dark Night of the Soul fellow. And of course they were both of an order. I think he was a Dominican also. Thomas Aquinas was a Dominican. Meister Eckhart was a Dominican. And a long line of Dominicans from the 12th century. And then Matthew Fox was a Dominican. And it's a teaching order. Most priests don't belong to any order at all. They're just priests. I mean, they're ordained, of course, but when you join an order, why, there's usually an abbot involved, and you're supposed to have, actually, some of the orders, not all of them, require chastity, obedience, and poverty are the things that you sign up for in some of these orders. But others have dropped poverty, but obedience to the abbot is still required. But the abbots, if they want to assign you to go do something that's absolutely fun somewhere, or to write a book, well, that's what they do. Jesuits is another order, and they're probably more famous. They're almost all teachers. Jesuits and Dominicans are most of them end up being teachers of one sort or another, and quite a few Franciscans also. But it's it's just an incredible thing.
So Matthew Fox, as a part of the teaching order, is bringing this out. I mean, I think it was great that he came to your center, In Spirit, Center for Spiritual Living, and he spoke there, and he shared.
Yeah, I think if anybody's interested, as of 3 years ago or 4 years ago, he was quite willing to do workshops in churches, and like a Saturday workshop. I think he still does that. He also has something, and we had this here. It was called Stations of the Cosmic Christ. If you're familiar with Catholic Stations of the Cross,
right,
where I believe it's 12 pictures, usually, or crosses or whatever, and quite often it's in stained glass windows in the Catholic churches. But it shows Jesus, struggling carrying the cross, out to his death. Matthew has turned this all around, and he says, let's make, instead of Jesus the Christ, let's make the cosmic Christ. And he has, I believe, he's going up to 14 stations. And he has this incredible artwork. He has a book out called Stations to the Cosmic Christ. And it's like 14 art figurines or figures that are made. He had an artist, I think it's MC Richards, that formed these clay, not necessarily statues, but these clay figures of like a door. I am the door, I am the vine. All the I am sayings of Jesus. And so it's an art show. And he showed it up at Claremont University like 4 years ago. And we went up to see it. And we asked, would you be interested, since it's in California already, would you be interested in us taking it for a few weeks? He said, no, how about a few months? And we had this incredible art show of Stations of the Cosmic Christ, and all that's still going around various churches, and it is really quite compatible. We found it to be very compatible with New Thought because it was all Jesus' sayings that tied back into to his theology, which is, as we said, New Thought. But on his website, you can contact and you could always ask. You can see where that show is and where what's happening to it. If you're a significant sized church, and people will come to see it. But it's valuable, so you got to have a secure location. You don't want somebody messing with it. That's just one of the things. I mean, he does so many things I can't name them all. He was an advisor to the governor of California, Jerry Brown, there for a while. I mean, he
Wow.
was, he basically knows everybody. I mean, Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, which is one of the biggest Episcopal cathedrals there is, he's part of that now. I mean, that's his. I believe that's his church that he's, that he, with the bishop up there, him and the bishop wrote another book, the Bishop of Grace Cathedral, and but he basically, I believe, reports to the bishop. A priest has to report to a bishop, so I think it's the one in Grace Cathedral. And he is a busy fellow, and you can say he's still, I believe, I forget he put his age in. I believe he was born in 1940, so he's only 82, I believe, and he's. I'm sure he's got a few more years in him. More than that. I don't think he'll ever retire.
So what would you say? I know I love the 21 ways of being a mystic, the different steps and the ways of being mystical. How would you say that Matthew Fox's teaching is practical and applicable for today? What would you say about that?
Well, a lot of people, including me, have a problem with Christianity, conventional Christianity being, and we're going to get a lot of bad mail for this, but being a fear-based religion. And Matthew, with his creation blessing, blessed creation theology, is really taken a good shot at that. And New Thought in no way is it a fear-based, it's a love-based religion. I mean, we all say that. Matter of fact, in almost every church I've been into, when the service is over, you can't get people out the door. They all hang around and talk about, you name it. And there is so much love going on. You can actually, it's palpable. You can actually feel it in almost every church that I know. When I've been to Mile High, it's like that too. I mean, it's you go to a Catholic church and when the Mass is over, wow, everybody's gone. Sometimes they hang around if there's free coffee or donuts or something, but they usually leave because Mass is mandatory, so you have to go. So on the Catholic Church, you still have to go. So Now I can speak about this. I was raised a Catholic. I went to a Methodist and Episcopal Protestant, on the words, seminary, and now I'm New Thought. So I know something about all three of these. And but he, you know, he preaches love. He doesn't actually. I don't know how often he preaches in the church. I'm sure he does from time to time, but at Grace Cathedral. But he's trying to take the fear out of fear-based religion. You know, if you're not baptized and you're told that you are absolutely for sure no way out, going to hell, and you're going to burn forever, that's fear. And that's why you get baptized, if you believe that. But Jesus never said that.
And that's really powerful because that's in mass consciousness that we're not enough and we're not good enough and there isn't enough, and all fear-based messaging that humanity is having to work through and to change our beliefs around that. So I'm really grateful for him for doing it, because he's speaking to the masses of a religion, of Christianity, and aiming to shift their perspective to see that we're enough. Whereas in New Thought, our doors open for that. That's where we come from. We're enough, and so he's doing incredible work to change that, the concept of not enoughness.
Yes, but I'm sure sometimes he feels like he's got an oar in the water, but he's on the Queen Mary. I mean, is
swimming
is he
against
really
the tide.
You can't turn that ship so quick. Let's put it that way. And but the Catholics definitely need another Vatican Council. Definitely. I mean, the 1960s.
They need spiritual mind treatment.
There you go. That could help. And like I say, the contemplatives, the people who belong to orders, they love that. They had a small voice at Vatican II, but it was a powerful enough voice that people did listen. But we need more of that, because we need more love in this world, and less divisiveness, less duality.
Absolutely.
And it's
wow.
Really difficult.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing today, Dr. Jim.
Well, it was 100% pleasure. I mean, this is the stuff I love. I mean, it's just not some task, and it's I can't. I think anybody that ever met Matthew Fox would fall in love with him. I mean, he's just that kind of a person. Yeah, we would do well to listen carefully, and I think those 21 mystical things. I mean, if you're a New Thought minister or practitioner, you might just maybe we'll get some permission and publish those or something. Stick them in a magazine article and say, "Here's your checklist. See if you can do that." I think he'd like that, or he might do it himself if we ask him. But if you think that's a good idea, why not?
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
I love your vast wisdom. And again, the Science of Mind Archives is so blessed to have you as one of our main researchers. And so whenever we have a research request, Dr. Jim is one of the first people that we send it to. And he has this incredible research library, I don't even know what to call it, of Ernest Holmes. I mean, you know everything about Ernest, and you've talked about even writing a book about the theology of Ernest Holmes, which I'll just keep reminding you because I think it would be fascinating.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's a database. What I do is I take every book I read, including Matthew Fox's, and I take notes and I say on page whatever this is what he said, and then I, I usually use a sticky pad as opposed to writing, and then I put those in an Excel program. And after you get about 5,000 quotes from Ernest Holmes on all of his books, you start you start figuring out his system. And he was a systematic theologian. He didn't like the word theologian because back in his day, theologian meant Bible theologian. In other words, justifying the New Testament and salvation. That's what a theologian and everybody but the so-called systematics. That's what they do. So, but thank you. It's a love of labor, a labor of love, both, I guess.
Both. Oh,
Thank you for being here and for sharing this wonderful and opening our minds and hearts to a mystic who's not doesn't really see himself as New Thought and yet is. I love that.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. You're doing a wonderful thing. You're actually making the world a better place for everyone. And thank you both for doing that.
Oh,
And anything I can do in the future to help you out, you know where I am.
it's true. Thank you so much.
thank you, Dr. Jim, and work that you're doing with Reverend Kathy at the Science of Mind Archives to keep Ernest Holmes' legacy absolutely alive and thriving, with all of the documents and the books and the computerization of everything that's happening right now, so that we can read the readings really easily and find them really easily. You are a blessing for what you are giving us as this gift with Ernest Holmes' work. Thank you.
Well, thanks for recognizing that. And yes, we have what 10,000 books. I forget how many books we've got, but we have almost every minister that's ever written a book in the New Thought field. Maybe not everyone, but and every time you pick up any book by any of them at the archives and you look at it, mysticism just jumps out at you. I mean, it's like, okay, these guys got the message way back. Maybe they got it from Troard, maybe they got it from Quimby, but they all have it. And that we haven't really had the funds to organize our research library that way, where you can research into who did what uh, in the past. But we're getting there slowly, and we need help if anybody wants to give us some hand, both volunteers and funding we need. So.
Yeah.
No, and we're grateful for Laura across the pond spreading the wisdom of the Science of Mind archives, as she's been a member and just has in ministerial schools just really has loved. I love hearing her say how much the archives has supported her on her journey. So thank you for
Yes,
spreading
thank
it
you, Laura.
overseas.
Thank you, Laura.
Definitely. And
Well,
thank you again for being here. And to all of the everybody that's been watching and viewing and listening, thank you for tuning in from wherever you are on the planet to listen to Dr. Jim today talking about Matthew Fox. What a treat.
What a treat.
well, thank you. I need to sign off. Thanks again.
Oh, and Reverend Kathy, that was great. What an interesting man, and what a great. I just love his consciousness and what he's brought to the show, opening my heart to Matthew Fox and mysticism.
No, definitely. Yeah, I shared at convention about our show, and Jim just started talking about this. I'm like, oh my God, you're talking about our show. And so I'm grateful that we could have him on here. And also grateful to New Thought Media Network and how New Thought Media Network is bringing all this out to the world. And if people want to contribute and donate to New Thought Media Network, it just keeps shows like this growing and expanding so we can all expand our consciousness in beautiful ways. And so we're really grateful to Reverend Robert Brzezinski and everyone at New Thought Media Network to have the archives as a part of this. So thank you so much. Please feel free to contribute.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Reverend Kathy. And also, please, we're doing it the other way around today. Please check out the Science of Mind archives. It's a fantastic resource, and there are so many amazing hidden gems in there when you start looking around. There are books and the magazines and all sorts of ways that you can become a member. There we go. We've both been promoting each other. I love that.
That's perfect.
Sharing the gifts of, yeah, it is perfect.
And we're
So
excited
tune
to
into
have,
the archives.
yes, and we're excited next time on August 9th. We're going to have Dr. Tracy Brown talk about Sarah Flowers and her mystic. And so we're really excited. Please join us at our next show twice a month, the second and fourth Tuesdays, 1 o'clock Mountain and 7 or 8 UK. But thank you so much. Blessings to all, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you to everyone for being here, and we will be here next time. And stay tuned into the network because we have New Thought today, right after this broadcast. Bye for now.
Bye.